You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We live F1. Welcome to Missed Apex Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Reddy, but my friends call me Spanners. So, let's be friends. Today, we're going to look at how we think the racing rules should look in Formula One, when you should be able to overtake and when you need to leave the room and all that kind of thing. Because F1 has gone from all the time you must leave a space, and that was, for the majority of the time I've been watching Formula One, the rule, if you like, is just leave space for people to race. Then we went into the 2021 era and it was just let them race. Let them do whatever they want. Let Verstappen push Hamilton 4 car widths off at Brazil. And then we've gone to these very, very prescriptive rules. And that's what I was calling for. I was like, come on, let's just make the rules clear. No, not like that. Not like that. So were we happy for any of those? No, we weren't. So it was the Piastri-Norris incident that got me thinking about this, because both of the drivers were racing hard. Norris was doing everything he could to stay in that gap, and Piastri was trying to make it hard to do so. And it's interesting to know where the line truly is, because in a way it is subjective unless you can have really precise prescriptive rules detailing all of that out. So to help me on this journey to try and establish what our baseline of racing rules and our racing thinking is club racer Alex Ginzy Van Gene. Hello, Alex.
Hello, Spanners. Yeah, it was funny when you mentioned 2021. My whole body just tensed up. It was just
Sorry
like
about
the PTSD of 2021 has still not left me, when I think it probably has, and then someone mentions it and I'm like, no, the racing was just not good because the rules weren't applied and the rules were wrong, and now the rules are even more wrong, and it makes me feel even worse. And it's to the point where I've not enjoyed F1 as much this year because the racing rules are ridiculous, the stewarding is inconsistent, and no one knows what's going on.
I'm going to argue that they've taken a step in the right direction. So I do like the fact that it's written down. Some people keep bringing up this clip, and it might be Massa and somebody else going side by side around Silverstone.
Massa and Kubica at Fuji in the pouring rain.
Right, and they're both off the track all the time. They both cut corners. They both go wide, and everyone's going, look, that's pure racing. To me, I look at that and I go, it's garbage. Like, there's no...
See, there's lines, and obviously they were well over those particular lines. It looks fantastic, and it's great for us. But the crucial thing was, no one hit each other, and it kind of ended up like it should have done. So that's kind of why it was let go, and it was because it was in the rain. If that was in the dry, I think that wouldn't have been let go as much as it was, but because it was in the pouring rain, you get a little bit more leeway.
So just for a little bit of context here, neither Alex or I are professional racers, but we both play race cars, don't we? And you've done club racing at a bunch of different levels. So I don't know how this equates to America, but like in the UK, you would be a Saturday league footballer and I'd be a pub Sunday league footballer. Like, I think if you were a footballer in the UK, your equivalent is that you would be a semi-pro. You'd probably get your 50 quid match fee. That's the sort of level you've raced karts at. And I'm definitely like a pub slogger in that I've gone out, I organise my own karting events, and and I play sim racing as well, which Max says is basically the same as being real. So we are people who participate in racing and who turn a wheel. And I think you and I have different philosophies. We have clashed on track.
Never.
To the point, there was one sim racing event where we looked back at the replay of what we thought was close racing, and we had given each other 3 car
Imola.
widths. Yeah, Imola, 3 car widths.
The left-hander after Villeneuve, I was thinking about that earlier when we were setting up for this call.
Because we were so determined not to hit each other. So in our own way, we have had our own version of papaya rules, which is Spanners and Jeansy cannot fall out over a racing incident again.
It happened a lot.
Yeah, but we take it seriously, and I think like in that way we have respect for some kind of racing rules and just a little bit of an understanding of what we would want from these racing circumstances. So I thought I'd just try and establish kind of a baseline by saying some general basic things we can all agree on. I want to introduce the Spanners lane system. Okay, bear with me. Like, have you ever heard the term back to square one? Right, we're going back to square one. That originated from radio commentary with football. So obviously you can't see it. The commentators would have and the listeners would have a chart, and all the squares on the pitch would be described. So the commentator could go, right, he's passed it to square 24. So in your head, you know where on the pitch it is. And square
So the
one.
pitch was a grid system.
Yeah,
basically.
and square one was the goalkeeper. So you go, right, and he's passed it back to square one. So if you're starting again, you go back to square one. So
if you'd have asked me what square one was, I'd have said the centre spot. So that's...
No, yeah, I think it was his goalkeeper. So Spanner's lane system, all I want to do for everything, we go left to right, 5 lanes, right? Left is 1, 2, 3 is the middle, 4, 5, right? Alex, that's
is this off a different patented system?
No, I'm saying that's just a way for us to talk about it and visualize where we are on track. So whether it's a left, right, or a hander, or a right hander, or a straight, if I say lane 1, that's all the way to the left. Lane 5, all the way to the right. Lane 3 in the middle. So basically, am I right here? If 2 cars are side by side and they're racing into a left-hander, generally they will go in lane 4 and 5 on the outside to the right-hand side, right?
Correct.
Then they'll come into the apex. Well, they'll generally occupy lane 1 and 2, assuming there's a wall on the inside.
As a visual person, trying to put this in my head while you're saying it is incredibly difficult, but I'm getting there.
Yeah, and then they would both naturally go out to lane 4 and 5 again. So the outside car goes 5, 2, 5, and then the inside car goes 4, 1, 4, right? That's the basic way that cars go through a turn.
Without hitting each other.
Yeah, and that is from the kind of Alonso all the time you have to leave the space rule. So I'll ask you the question, Alex. Do you prefer all the time you must leave a space, or let them race, anything goes, good luck, or some kind of prescriptive rules?
Even though it means I have to agree with Fernando Alonso on something, yes, all the time you have to leave the space. It means it's fair, it's clean. It means the person who's having a go at you gets the opportunity to actually stay on track and actually race you. And it means you get racing from corner to corner to corner to corner, and it's exciting. We had that. Was it Miami between Hamilton and Sainz this year before Sainz launched him the last corner, that we actually had some incredible racing between those two where they did exactly that. They left all the room and we saw them race through a sequence of corners side by side, and whoever got ahead, and it was beautiful, clean racing, other than what we've seen some other people do.
Well, we also had at Mugello or Portimao, I can't remember which one, in 2020, had great multi-battle corner between Perez and Hamilton. So, but nowadays with the rules, you almost have to get drivers to consent to that. And we've seen midfield battles where the drivers do just leave space even when they don't have to. And you kind of get this old school kind of reminiscing of, oh, that's how cars used to go through multiple series of corners before it was okay to just run someone out off track.
Yeah, it's the reason I hate the current rule set, because the current rule set means get to the apex, which basically means come off the brakes in the braking zone so that you're at the apex before the next person. And it doesn't matter if the person on the outside still exists and is still trying to turn. They have to bail out of the way, or they are to blame. And it's just stupid. It doesn't make any logical sense.
And it's not fun to watch.
And it's not fun to watch. You know, we don't have multiple corner long battles anymore. We have, oh look, this person's run this person off the track, but that's fine. Let's get on with it.
Yeah. So drivers have always run other drivers off track, and they have always closed the door when somebody has tried to make an overtaking maneuver. So I've got a bunch of examples, and one of them is Senna versus Prost, which you can easily look up. Senna Prost, 1989. And as they go into the final corner, Senna is down the inside. He's got a fair amount of car alongside, and Prost turns into the apex, and they both crash and go off in that corner. Oh, hang on.
Prost did not turn into the apex. Prost turned into the side of Senna,
okay.
And they were nowhere near the apex yet.
No, that's good.
That was surely, you're not coming past me, I'm hitting you.
Yeah, and that did feel cynical. That did feel deliberate, that particular one. But I've lost my train of thought with that, actually, Alex, because you're right. Yeah,
Sorry.
I think it's like in my head, he was sort of going for the apex and going, I'm going to shut the door. But yeah, I think this was more the championship's on the line. I'm going to take you out. This is more of a Schumacher thing.
It was championship on the line. We hate each other. I'm not letting you get past me without any form of contact. If we both go out of the race, I win the championship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm just going to look at our racing styles, Alex. I would say that generally you're a little more aggressive than I am. And I'm wondering how much, look at him holding his tongue. I'm just wondering how much the aggression should be part of racing. So how much of yield or crash is important or is an inherent part? Because I'm starting to feel that at the moment like people are becoming very prescriptive, and that people don't really like that yield or crash when you're having these online discussions about whose fault it is. So the only thing I will ever do that's yield or crash is if I really think the person to the inside of me doesn't have enough of their cart or their sim car alongside, and I'll shut the door and I'll make it obvious that I'm shutting the door. I'll start moving over, and it will be kind of clear, like, oh my God, if I don't back out of this, we're going to crash. The other thing I do is I kind of hold my middle line. So if I'm in lane 3, say there's a right-hander coming up, right-hander. So everyone wants to go to lane 1, right? To be on the outside. So if I've got a guy in lane 5 who wants to come over to lane 1, I will doggedly park my car in lane 3 and just let them hit me and be like, wow, technically I didn't have to move. But, then we're both out of the race. But yeah, what level of that aggression do you think is valid?
So first of all, I've now discovered I'm not as aggressive as I once was. That is seen in a lot of my races at the moment, where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna make my way through first lap, and I've lost 3 places, and then I have to try and be aggressive to get my way back up. So I'm not as bad as I used to be.
So basically, the Norris and Hamilton approach to lap 1.
I'm not as aggressive as I used to be. I used to be incredibly aggressive, especially when I had a rental car that I didn't have to pay for and there's big plastic bumpers around it. I was a lot more aggressive. But no, so the yield or crash, I only prescribe to that as the driver ahead if the driver behind me is going for something audacious around the outside and I have to physically move out of their way or they will crash. It's like, I'm sorry, you've put yourself there. If you want to continue off into the wall, that's your prerogative. The inside one, it very much depends on if that person hits me, am I going round?
Yeah.
Because if that person hits me and I'm going round, it doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong. I've gone round.
Yeah, that's true. And it's
don't go round.
It's a big kind of breath moment when you decide to go for the apex. It's really hard to tell if someone's going to stick it out and you kind of go, breathe, apex.
The one where that's most is actually in sim racing, because in sim racing, if you take the slightest bit of contact, you've generally got damage. And if you go round, it's a nightmare. In a car, you generally get knocked to the side. And then that person who realizes they've hit you goes, oh, okay, I'll nudge you straight again. And you don't lose too much time. So it's one of those things where it's about you've always got somebody who you're racing with who's like, it's always me. I'm always the one getting spun round. And it's like, yeah, but is it because people go for a move on you and you just go, I'm turning? What's the meme from?
Don't do the meme. Don't do the meme.
I lost my train of thought now. Hang on. Yeah. So it's like, oh, it's always me getting spun round. But but it's always you because you just turn in when there is somebody there. Okay, maybe they shouldn't have been there because they've lunged from miles away, but don't turn in, you live to fight another day.
Yeah, so a lot of the time we look at this from the perspective of what the rules are, but then there's also that element of self-policing, isn't it? There's that element of, okay, you're in the hospital, and the zebra crossing, it was your right of way, but you still shouldn't have stepped out into the road. But yeah, I don't know, like, you can drive like Verstappen, even if the rules weren't the way they are now, you can still just send it from far away. And if they jump out of the way, and this is something that we have to agree on as well, like, if they jump out of the way, you haven't done anything wrong, right? Like, if you fly down the middle from miles back and they just jump out of your way, you've won, right? Is that valid?
It is, because you haven't caused an incident, the person around you. And also, if you do pull off a move like that, it means the person behind was expecting you to do something like that. So that means the move was kind of on because they're going for you. So, for example, if we talk about the Miami one between Sainz and Hamilton, I was watching that before. The final lunge from Sainz came just before the 50, when Lewis was just before the 50 board. At the 50 board, Lewis is done braking and is starting to turn in. So he has no intention of having someone come up the inside of him. And Sainz has gone, maybe I've misbraked myself, because that's what that move looked like.
Yeah.
And oh crap, I've got to send it. Oh no, there's a red car turning in on me. oh dear, I've hit them.
So that's Miami this year. That was Miami this year in the final corner as well. And I think Sainz did have at that time still a very much, that's my race car. I need to prove.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
I keep forgetting about that point.
to prove it. And yeah, so actually that's a good point. That's a good place to start, is the dive bomb. When is a dive bomb a dive bomb? And I think we can go sort of specifically into F1 here. So we were looking at Piastri versus Verstappen in Abu Dhabi 2024. We were talking about that earlier. I sent you some screenshots. And it's the one where initially I thought, oh, good, Piastri's held his ground. Watching it back and going frame by frame, I've actually changed my mind on that incident a little bit. But your first instinct was Max came from really far back. And this is turn one, so you can go back and you can pause
and
here.
It's from the very start as well.
Yeah, it's from the start, so they're not at full speed. He's about, I don't know, from the gearbox to his nose, there's maybe a half a car length, and that's how Verstappen's behind. And he decides to send it into turn one. And actually, Piastri must have had a good look at him. You don't know what they can see in these mirrors, but goes straight to the apex, leaving Max to climb all over the curb. And so looking at that, is that a dive bomb from Verstappen? They are alongside by the time they get to the apex.
It's that kind of move that does class as a dive bomb because it's come from right behind, last minute lunge to the apex. You're not along. He was never alongside he wasn't alongside going into the corner. It was, oh, I've got a bit of overspeed here. I might be able to have a chance. But you have to have compliance. And Oscar, it's turn one. He's focusing on whoever's in front of him, and he's turning towards the apex. I don't even think he's thinking about Max. And it's that kind of thing where, as the overtaking driver, you do have to sit there and go, how much do they know
it's Christmas
I'm about
time.
to do this?
Yeah.
Because in every single overtaking move and every single defense, there has to be compliance. When there's not compliance, there's a crash.
Chris has just made a really good point that lane one should just always be the inside lane. Oh, can't change it now, can I?
He was saying that 5 lanes was too complicated a second ago, and said it should be 3.
Chris is just too easily confused. There you go. No, left is always 1, right is always 5. I'm happy with that. So in this Piastri Verstappen one, Piastri has made not an error, but here's something that I think that a lot of the drivers maybe don't think about, because we've seen a few incidences like this. If you think of a running track, like lane 1 is always on the inside. And like in lane 2, if you go around in lane 2, you're always leaving 1 car's width on the inside, but it's unrealistic for an F1 car to always stick in lane 1, or even to come in from lane 3 to the apex and then exit in lane 1. You have to leave some space. So the tighter you squeeze to the inside, the more you have to expect, in a way, that the driver on the inside is going to struggle to stick close. And on that exit in Abu Dhabi, actually Piastri, he doesn't go out of his way. He takes exactly the same line as the car ahead, not accounting for the car on the inside. And the car on the inside, he's put on the curb, which unsettles again and affects the ability to turn. And although I agree that that's technically Verstappen's fault, and I think he got a penalty for that, if you roll that tape back as Piastri, you go, should I have avoided getting spun out there?
I think Piastri didn't see it coming.
Right.
I think if Piastri had seen it coming, he'd have left more room and he wouldn't have got spun.
Right. So you're agreeing that the wise thing to do would have been to leave more room. So let's
it would have been, but the onus is always on the overtaking car. So the overtaking car has to be like, right, I'm going to go for this move. This person I'm making the move on has to comply with me. Otherwise, we're going to have contact. And that didn't happen. So because Max, especially, he wasn't alongside, he wasn't showing a nose or anything like that, he just all of a sudden appeared. That's why it ends up on Max, because at that point where he got alongside to have a go at Oscar had been to the corner already.
Yeah, there was no contact at the corner, though. The contact was as they went out. And you go, well,
but there would have been if there was a wall there, and there only wasn't the contact because Max had to go on the curb.
Okay, but
which isn't the racetrack, so he shouldn't have been there anyway.
Here's my lane system's going to work now. The contact occurred with Max in lane 2 and Piastri in lane 3 long before the exit. So there was 2 lanes worth of space to Piastri's right hand side. They weren't yet at the exit. So what determines which line you take to the exit? Because in one world, it's valid to say, well, Verstappen can head directly out to lane 4 on the right-hand side, as long as he leaves lane 5 for Piastri.
What lane is inside of lane 1 where Max was off the circuit?
Lane 0.
Okay, so he was in lane 0. Lane 0 is illegal, so he was off the track and then came back on and hit Oscar.
Yeah.
So it is on Max.
Yeah.
Again, if Oscar was thinking that someone was making a move, he probably could have seen Max and gone, "Whoa!" and jumped out the way. But because Oscar wasn't compliant and it was a dive from Max is at fault.
Yeah. And I agree. I'm just trying to establish, like, there's no prescriptive path for two cars to go from the apex to the exit. Like, there's no specific way. You could do it in a shallow way, or you could go straight out there. And it's particularly complicated when you've got one driver taking a early braking zone and an early apex, and one braking late to defend and taking a late apex. So, yeah, I think it's definitely very hard to prescribe what each driver should be doing.
So now we need lane 1.5, then 2.5, and then we can split the lanes down even more. So we need like 17 lanes.
Okay, 17 lanes. From now on, it's 17 lanes. But I think we're going along the right direction. Okay, then. So let's look at the example of Leclerc and Russell at Zandvoort. Mainly because we never got to speak about this live. I was actually really surprised at your opinion, and I've based a lot of my opinions from talking to the likes of you and Brad and Kyle and like racers, and when I've thought something was not my fault and you've pointed out why it was, I've gone, okay, and I've tested and adjusted. So for everything I've picked up from what the racing rules I think they should be, for you to say that was on Russell, as a Russell fan, that was Russell's fault, I was actually really surprised. So here's another fundamental. Are the track limits the limits of the track? Should all racing be done on track?
Yes, track limits are track limits. We have in the racing I do, they don't monitor track limits because they don't have enough people and they don't have the technology. In F1, we have the technology, we have the white lines, and we can see whether people are over the white lines or not. It depends on what we want to do with the white lines. Is it the outside wheels over the white line means you're off the circuit, or is it whole car off the circuit? But it's also how you ended up being off the circuit. So I was very much a case of, geez, Charles, what are you doing? That's a bit crazy initially. Then I saw a couple of different angles, and the best angle is the one which is looking at the from the inside of the track, looking towards the corner. Because what actually happens is, if you go back and watch George's lap before, he takes an entirely different line. So he took a very different line into that corner while defending from Charles, which meant he also pushed Charles much wider in an unusual way to the way he would have taken the corner, which was George shoving Leclerc off the circuit. He took a completely different arc. And that's the reason I put it on George, and why I loved the move from Charles, and why I was so pleased that the stewards didn't give Charles a penalty, because Charles tried to shove Leclerc off the circuit, and Leclerc went, nope. And they banged wheels. It looked great, and it was a great move, and I loved it.
I appreciate the goodness of it. And I'm reminded of something in turn 2 once in Hungaroring, where he Grosjean overtook around the outside and then got a penalty, and they went, oh, it's ruined it. You've ruined good racing. Yeah, but he left the track. Leclerc left the track for whatever reason. So
two wheels are off the track.
No, he was completely off the track. He was totally over the white line. Chat, let us know. Oh, so now
hang on, but that does go back to the fact of he was forced off the circuit.
Sure. So if you're forced off the circuit, you can just drive back on, bang wheels, and keep the overtake.
Yeah, it's a bit like Max and Lando at Kota. They both went off the circuit. Max clearly shoved him off the circuit. If it doesn't matter what positions they come back on the track, because they were shoved off the circuit, they're both recovering to the circuit.
Yeah, but here one car was on track and one car wasn't.
But the car was off track because it got forced off the circuit. They both could have survived through that corner if George hadn't have run him off.
So chicanes is then an interesting one to go on to. I hate chicanes. I have no idea how to drive chicanes. I have no idea how to race chicanes. They're just horrible. And if you're ever side by side through a chicane, I always feel like the driver on the inside of the first part of the chicane just drives to the apex of the second part of the chicane. Every driver up and down the land does what George Russell did. So and I did it to a listener on a Missed Apex event, and since then I've always driven much less aggressively. But yeah, side by side, I figured, yeah, okay, I've got the inside line into the first one. Now I head to the Apex. Good luck, right? And that person, Manny, if you're listening, I'm so sorry. Come back. Like, you can drive for free for the next one. I'm so sorry I did that to you. It just always feels like you, as the outside car into the first part of a chicane, you're always onto a loser. Like, how many times do we see at Monza a car trying to go around the outside just gets shoved off into the runoff area? That almost feels like it's become normalized in racing.
Comes back to what I said before about compliance. And this is where, and the thing is, the reason we see it a lot in Formula One is because you're allowed to do it. Because you're allowed to shove people off the circuit, people shove people off the circuit. You then get other people who will be like, oh, okay, I'll give you the room and we can race. We can race through it. I don't want to have contact. I don't want to risk breaking my car and ruining my race because you've had to go around the outside. Chicanes are an interesting case when it comes to overtaking. Depends on the type of chicane. So the Zandvoort chicane is very different because it's got a very fast lead in to the right-hander and then a really wide radius exit to the corner. And it's banked as well. So you can actually get two cars side by side through it. The Monza one, the first chicane at Monza, is a bit of a special case because by the time the main driver has hit the apex, it's very difficult for them to then tighten up to give the room to let the other car go, unless they are very aware that it's there. If the rules are put into place that you can't run somebody off the circuit, and if somebody is alongside you going into a corner, you must leave them the space through the corner, we will see some excellent racing through there. Because what will happen is the person who's at the apex will have to tighten up to then try and get a better exit. Yeah. So you might have the person who's gone for the overtake around the outside get to the apex first, but the person who's then put themselves to the outside gets a better run, and then you get them racing into Curva Grande, and then you get them racing into the next chicane where they can do the exact same thing again, and then they're side by side for the Lesmos. You tell me what racing you want.
Yeah.
Do you want it all over in one corner, or do you want them racing all the way down to Ascari?
Curva Grande, which in Italian means a whale's big toe. Oh, no, it means big toe. Yeah, and that's what I should have done to Manny, and I will do next time. Sorry, Manny. So, yeah, but you
can just blame a skill issue on that, though, Spanners.
So I want to know what you mean by forced off, then. That's really interesting. What does forced off mean?
So this is where the lane system comes into play.
Right, okay, good. Remember, lane 1 is always on the left. Lane 5 is always on the right.
I'm going to talk middle lanes at the moment. So So let's say we're going into chicane. Let's use Monza. We're going to the chicane. We're in the two middle lanes because invariably what happens when you're coming into that chicane is you're not quite covering the inside, you're not quite covering the outside, and you're slap bang in the middle of the track.
So you're both straddling 3.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
So you're both going through the middle of the corner. Once you turn in, you have to keep turning. So the way I try and explain this to people with iRacing is if I've got the apex to my right hand side,
to the first,
as I'm turning into the corner, I can use as much of that room as I want. I can be that far away from the apex, or I can be bang on the curb if I want to.
Okay, listeners, he's held his fingers 2 different distances apart.
Let's talk in meters then, shall we? Okay, so when I have the apex to my right hand side, I have the inside curb to my right hand side, I can be 5 meters away for it, or I can be bang.
You are not obliged to take the apex.
Correct. But I'm also not obliged to go into the space that is occupied by another vehicle. I don't understand why that particular thing is argued so much. What do you mean you're entitled to occupy the space already occupied by somebody else?
Yeah.
It drives me mental, especially when people do it on straights. It drives me nuts.
Yeah.
So you have the space to work with between the apex and yourself and where the other car is. If you move into their space of where they are, unless they comply to move over, if you hit them, that's on your foot. That's what that is. Or you move them, that is you forcing them off the circuit.
Yeah. And so very often we see cars only moving into space that has been unoccupied. So if a car jumps out of your way, it's occupying that piece of track and then you can move into it, right? So if you scare that car into thinking that you're just going to move out and they decide to steer off, like Leclerc did, you're entitled to then take up that space, right?
No, Leclerc. So Leclerc didn't just steer off. So they follow the path of the corner,
Yeah.
and George is coming across as he's there. He doesn't want him to hit, so he moves over as much as he can, and then George continues to come across. That's when they hit. That's when he goes over the line, and then they bump around the corner and they.
Oh,
off.
did they hit on the entry? I didn't realise that they hit on the right hand.
No. As they've gone into sorry, I'm doing the racing driver thing where I hold my hands out in front, where I hold my hands out in front of me.
Yeah.
As they've come into the left hand part of the chicane,
yeah.
That's when George has come across, because Leclerc has, as far as he's concerned, he's won, because he's got to the point of where he can be like, right, I'm in position to now be on the inside for the inside of this corner. Then they have contact because George has gone, nope, you're going off the circuit.
What used to happen with Verstappen a lot before we had these very prescriptive rules is we would talk about Verstappen forcing people off. And in fact, we talk about Hamilton forcing people off as well. And he used to really bully Rosberg by throwing his car out onto the exits. And we
Cota.
and Canada as well. I think that that Rosberg jumped out of the way in that first corner in like 2015 or something. And even as not a Rosberg fan, we were kind of going, well, it's technically okay because Rosberg kept vacating the space, therefore Hamilton could go into it. Even if Rosberg would argue, well, he was coming into that space, so I had to vacate it. The argument is, well, but he was right. Well, you did vacate it, so that's kind of okay. But if he holds his ground and gets hit, then suddenly it's Hamilton's fault for moving into a space a car existed.
I think as well, the issue they would have had there was your teammates do not hit each other.
True.
Max never had that issue because it was always against Hamilton. And how much did we plead for Hamilton to just not move? How many times, like, Lewis, don't move. Let him hit you, then he gets a penalty.
Yeah, but then
if he keeps shoving you off the circuit, he's not going to get the penalty for it.
Imola 2021, he held his ground, got hit, and there was no penalty. So it was kind of like, it didn't really work out that way. But yes, absolutely.
Turn 1, you mean?
It
sent
was
him over the apex.
Yeah, turn 1, turn 2,
Again, PTSD.
But then in Abu Dhabi, because it was pretty much similar situation in the chicane, Hamilton decided not to get hit and goes over the chicane. And fair enough, they didn't tell him to give the place back. But people were calling, why isn't that a penalty? Well, you've got to have one or the other. Either he's allowed to hold his ground, and if he gets hit, it's a penalty, or you are allowed to jump out of the way and without consequence. So is there ever a case where you can kind of go, it was all right that I moved because he was definitely going to hit me? It feels like to me, really, anytime there's no contact, it's fine. They were fine. He stayed on the track, it's fine.
I guess it depends, because if you're trying, if the way the person is coming at you, if you don't move out the way, you're both out the race, then you've kind of got to. But this is why you can't have prescribed rules. This is why prescribed rules don't work, because every situation is different, every corner is different, and however much we don't want it to, the people involved matter. I mean, I think I might have said this before. I would love that there is a fourth steward who sits in a room who's not watching the race. He gets sent every incident. All the cars are blank, and they make a opinion on it, because there is zero doubt in my mind that some incidents get critiqued differently because of who's involved in them.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and like that's not just this steward doesn't like that driver, or this steward has been supportive of another driver. Trying very hard to tiptoe.
Same
around,
same steward.
Yeah. It's that it's unconscious bias as well. It can be we don't want to ruin the race. It can be we don't want to affect the leadership challenge. Oh, that bit of wings hanging off. Wait a minute, which car is it? Magnussen. Oh yeah, black and white flag. Oh, is it Lando fighting for the championship? No, he's fine. You crack on.
I was staggered that they didn't meatball Lando. I thought, oh, Lando's going to get a meatball. And then when he came in for his pit stop, I thought the team might rip it off. And they didn't.
No.
They just left it pointing out at a 45-degree angle in the opposite direction. So I don't know whether they took that rule away after nailing Magnussen with it. He got it twice, didn't he?
Oh, I think it was a few times because, yes, the team were getting very, very upset about it.
But is it also telling off the naughty boy? Because Magnussen was constantly a naughty boy, so you just get him out of the way.
Well, I mean, Lando, he went and hit 2 cars, didn't he? So, as much as I feel like I agree with Christina in that the one this weekend was a bit of a not a nothing burger, but it was like, that's just the kind of thing that happens if you had to blame one person.
I was listening to that this morning on my run, and I was very proud of Matt because
we've had so much abuse for Matt. We've had so much abuse aimed at Matt for that.
So the thing that Matt noticed was Max checked up. And I'm not saying he did it intentionally, not at all. Sometimes when you go through a corner, you get on the brakes or you have a hesitation and you check up, and the cars behind you don't notice. Happens all the time in karting. It is so common. It's not anyone doing anything
me and
wrong.
Matt were saying, me and Matt both used to get into incidences because we did it out of being rubbish and timid. Max was just like, I'm cool. I'm where I am. I can do what I want.
Max didn't even feel the contact. So, and because he checked up, it caught Lando out. Lando insignificantly taps the back of him. So insignificantly, Max didn't know he got hit.
But that's what bent the wing. So not totally insignificant.
But the actual force of the incident wasn't
right.
Bad. Those wings are flimsy. So, and that's what gave Lando a snap, which is what then sent him into Oscar. However, I was looking back at one of these the other day, and I slowed some of the footage down. And what was very interesting was when they were side by side going through turn 3, Oscar has an amount of lock on. And just before Lando gets his switch, Oscar puts on more lock.
To the left.
Which would have pinched Lando closer to the corner. So again, Oscar was complicit in going, right, I'm going to squeeze you. Well, you've made a lunge on me. I'm going to squeeze you as much as I can.
Well,
he actually had loads of room to the right hand side of him, and he could have easily have just cruised around the outside. And it might have been better for him if he had, because Lando hit the back of a checking up Max Verstappen, he wouldn't have been hit, and he might have actually got a slingshot and may have got past Lando. If it went really well, he could have got past Max.
The amount of abuse that we got from that, and by the way, my line is very clear, is if you insult us or the panel or the show, then I'll just delete the comment and I'll hide you from the channel or block you on Twitter. There's no reason for me to continue interacting with you once you do that. But disagree, of course, disagree, debate, that's fine. But yeah, loads of people are, oh, here we go again. How can you blame Max for that? These guys are losers, blah, blah, blah. And you go, oh, look, we're just pointing out what happened and how the cars were.
It's not a blame on Max at all. No. There is 0% blame for Max in that, but Max checked up. But that's just a consequence of him being ahead, being able to place his car where he wants to place his car. It's for everyone else behind, Lando, not to hit him. So if you wanted to account blame, it is Lando's fault because Lando is the one that made contact with 2 cars. But it's, as Christina says, it's a nothing burger. It's a very typical first lap misdemeanor that if it had happened to Bortoletto, Lawson and Tsunoda, no one would have cared and gone, oh, look what happened. Off they go. But it's also because Oscar bitched and moaned for what felt like half the blooming race afterwards.
As I said in the race review, hardly warrior poet stuff, is it there? That was, not good. But I'm glad you pointed out the Oscar squeezing, basically. And I don't watch the post-show stuff because, well, basically I don't have time. I have other commitments and then I jump on here. And also I just like to give my opinion. I can be wrong. It doesn't matter if I'm wrong. My reputation in no way is changed on whether I'm correct or not correct. I like having a go at judging things the same way as you guys. But I went back. I've seen the Skypad stuff since then. And Davison also was agreeing, and he was saying, he squeezed to the left in the right-hander of that. So to the left, to the right, Piastri is trying to move Norris more to the left. And then when he goes around that final left-hand turn, he's basically staying in lane 2, like the sprinter, staying tight, expecting Norris to stay very, very tight. So whilst you can put the blame on Norris, that was definitely avoidable from Piastri. He could have gone, right, I'm just going to leave more room, and actually I've got a better run because I'm having to turn my steering less. I guess I can get on the power earlier. And so that wasn't maybe the smartest racing.
I'm pleased. I hadn't seen the Ant Davison thing.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
literally saw a 2-shot video on TikTok, and I think I even clipped it and sent it in our group. And I was
Yeah.
like, "Aha! This is the thing. This is what happened." So
Yeah.
with Ant Davison agreeing with me means I'm right. So
Exactly. Unless he disagrees with me, and then no. And then, oh my God, what's he doing on Sky? Get rid of him. But yeah, on that turn two, he was well away from the right-hand apex because he was racing. And I think that's fine. I admire that you're racing because the hope is in that situation that you're going to make Norris go, I can't make it. I can't make it here. And this is where the yield or crash thing comes in. This is like a smaller version of the yield or crash, which is I'm squeezing you. Are you sure this is worth it? And here we go. Squeezing is another valid thing to ask you about, Alex. So when you're going down to a straight, now there's a few incidents here that I'm going to highlight, which is Perez versus Sainz in Baku last year. And I think that was with 2 laps to go, where Sainz drove to the left.
oh yeah, I didn't see that race. I was away for that race.
Yeah, but you must have hit Perez. And then the other one was involving Perez again at Monaco with, I think, Hulkenberg up his right-hand side, up from turn 1, up the hill. And so they're different incidents in a way. Well, they both have straights that kink a little bit. So also you've got Bottas versus Russell in Imola, which I think was in like 2022 or something like that. And so these are incidents where you go, right, people are jostling for track position. And what can you do to manipulate your chances into the final turn? So one for me was, I do this in practice races, Watkins Glen, big long straight down to the bus stop chicane. But out of the S's, generally you'll have people, you might have someone on your right-hand side. Yeah, so in lane 5, and then I'll be in lane 3. And there's a right-hander coming up to the end. And obviously everyone wants to get across to lane 1, and I just doggedly hold my position. Because I'm hoping that once we get to the chicane, I'm massively compromising their ability to take a good attack into the right-hand apex. Now, is that valid? Because a lot of the time, Alex, what happens is they just go, well, he's going to move over to lane 1 eventually, surely. And then they just hit me and we crash.
Funny enough, I've had an incident like this. It was Monza, I think, and I stuck it on YouTube. And I stuck it on YouTube and I put it in Reddit. And actually, one of the mods from iRacing, one of the official rule makers from iRacing, came on and told me I was right. So that made me happy, which was I squeezed the guy to the inside. I love a good squeeze.
Now, is this down to turn 1? Down to turn 1.
Down to turn 1. I love a good squeeze. A squeeze is brilliant because it makes you, you are testing the mettle of the person next to you on whether they are going to go for a deep dive into the next corner or they're going to go, nope, I will back out and live to fight and try and fight this in a different way. Yeah. And you get it more in iRacing than you do in real life because there's no consequences, no real life consequences. But basically, you get people who just go, well, I want you to move over, so I'm going to turn.
Yes. Yeah.
And we crash or we don't. You make the choice. And at this point, I decided to move over. I moved over a little bit, but then I stopped. And I'm entitled to stop.
Now then, I can see why he's upset.
I can see why he's upset. But this goes back to what I said before about the chicane at Monza. You can only occupy a space that's there. I'm allowed to move. I'm allowed to use as much of that space to the left-hand side
as little
as I want.
Yeah.
So I've decided because the corner's coming up and I want to give myself something to swing into. So I've moved over 1 lane. He is allowed to move over 1 lane. He's like, okay, but I want to move over 2 lanes. I'm like, I don't want to move over 2 lanes. He kept moving. We had a crash.
Well, hang on. Let's use the Spanner's lane system. And by the way, EJ's saying if you have a clip to that link, can you drop it in and I'll put it in the show notes as well. Yeah, so basically, you moved from 3 to 4 and he assumed you were going to go, you moved from 3 to 2 and he assumed you were going to go 3, 2, 1 all the way to the left. And so he went, 5, 4, 3, and then suddenly you haven't moved over and he hits you. Yeah. So that is technically his fault. But I can definitely see why he's going, oh, that guy's going to go all the way to the left. We're going to resume our normal racing line. But yeah, so we're saying a squeeze is valid. But what seems to be happening quite a bit in F1 at the moment is people are squeezing to the inside and then also squeezing on the outside. And then the car on the inside is the one getting blamed and the one getting the penalty. This happened, I think, in 2023 between Russell and Perez. And Perez squeezed Austria down to turn 4. Perez squeezed into the middle. And Russell was trying to hold the inside line. And Perez, instead of going, it's downhill on the exit, instead of going to the outside, He then took a lane 3 exit and held that. Russell hit him, got the penalty.
I don't remember that one. I'm trying to count lanes, and my dyslexia is hurting me.
Basically, Perez defended in the middle on entry.
Yeah,
and then he defended in the middle on exit.
Where was Russell?
On the inside.
Inside?
On the inside. Yeah.
Okay.
And so Russell just had no chance, understeered into him and crashed.
So this is where, again, as a defending car, if you are squeezing somebody into a right-hand corner and they decide to take the corner, you then have a choice. And this is where it's about being complicit and making a decision. If you're going to squeeze someone, you have to think, how are they going to take the corner if I have put them in this position? And if you don't think they're going to understeer a little bit going into the corner because you've put them right up against the apex,
you're mad.
They've not taken any room. They're not going to have an opportunity to back out. You know by what point whether they're going to back out or not. You have to give them a little bit of understeer room, or you're going to get hit. You know, and funny enough, I was just doing some racing on iRacing this week at the Red Bull ring, and I've had that exact thing happen, which is I put somebody up the inside. However, I went all the way off the track, and he still hit me. But you know, so I gave and I gave and I gave until I had no more to give. If you then still get hit, you've done everything you can. But it's a bit. And this is again why I always think it's difficult to have rules, because it has to be fluid.
But you could have a guideline where you could go, hey, one factor to consider is if a defending driver or the driver that's not on the inside squeezes someone to the middle, i.e. allows them less room to take a good wide line, that's valid, but that is also a consideration in what happens in the second part of the corner. So almost the rule is, if you squeeze someone, go wide on the exit. Almost.
So it's why the rule I like the most is leave a car's width. Leave a car's width solves 99% of the problems.
But how does that work for the Perez one? So he's got
for an inside move, you're still leaving a car's width to the inside.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
If you're not leaving the leaving of the extra gap, you can't prescribe that, because no driver can judge. You know, if you say, right, you've got to leave a car's width plus 5%, no driver can do that while they're driving. So it's a case of there's a bit of etiquette in there.
There's slightly self-policing element. All the examples where we've pointed this out, the outside driver has got hit. So Piastri, Abu Dhabi 24, squeezes inside, doesn't go all the way out, gets hit. We've just talked about the squeezing at the last race at Singapore, got hit. Perez didn't leave room on the exit after squeezing, got hit. And there was another one. And then I'll throw in Silverstone 2021 in there just to get the YouTube comments racked up, just as a free block list. But yeah, so we see it kind of being self-policing in those situations. So in a way, you could kind of go, well, squeezing inside and on entry and on exit, it kind of tends to get punished anyway.
Self-policing, leave a space on the outside. Always leave a car's width either side of your car. It solves itself.
Yeah, and here's another one. Albon did the same thing to Hamilton, same corner, turn 4, Austria.
He just turned in.
Yeah.
He just and again, I mean, we'll get slammed in comments because it's Hamilton and whatever.
Yeah.
But I've pulled that move on people into that corner. Okay, it's a sim. Get over it. Racing's racing. It doesn't matter what you're racing. Moves are the same. Okay. And you can live with that or not, but that is real. And if somebody's up your inside, which Lewis clearly was, he was a dive and he had gone to the apex, but Albon just took the normal racing line. If Albon had left room and Lewis still hit him, that's on Lewis. But he didn't. He just took the racing line. And it drives me nuts. It happens in karting all the time, which is people put blinkers on and they just turn. There are several of my videos you can go and watch where I shout at.
Well, where can I watch these? Where can I watch these videos, Alex?
At Alex Van Gien Racing on YouTube. You can go and watch me shouting at various people. Well, I say various people. It's usually the same person who just goes, "Oh, I'm going to turn," and just hits.
Wait a minute. Your appearance on Missed Apex wouldn't happen to coincide with a new release of a karting video, would it?
No new release of a karting video was a couple of weeks ago, which was my most recent video.
Last week.
If you want to watch how a weekend goes from fine to unraveling into absolute disaster, go and watch my latest video, which is me at Clay Pigeon Raceway.
Or just go and watch Alex at any karting weekend live. Just go there. You'll see that kind of same sequence of events.
Ella Park in 2 weeks.
Oh, I like Ella Park.
Ella Park in
Suffolk.
2 weeks. We're gonna have some fun down there.
The new layout's really good up there.
We're using the old layout, which I actually prefer.
Right, okay.
Anyway, however, I am doing a iRacing series, so I'm trying to get more. So when iRacing got boring, I decided to try lots of things, and my iRating went from 3,000 down to 1,800.
Same.
And my license went from A to C.
I've had the same journey.
And now I'm trying to get it back up. So I'm using the Super Formula Light, which is basically the new F3, and it's brilliant, and it's so much more fun than the old F3 car, apart from it doesn't sound as good. And it's been on some really great tracks. I have 3 videos to post, but I haven't got around to the edit yet. So keep an eye on the channel if you want to watch
Pat says, great YouTube channel, worth the subscription for the bonus content, by the way. I mean, it's okay. It's fine. Lots of people bringing up Brazil when we were talking about Hamilton and Albon. Now, this is different. And actually, this is the last issue I have with the current racing rules. So Albon and Hamilton, where you had a long right-hander, and it's the final of the Wiggly Woos. So in Brazil, you've got that really long straight, the great center S's. You've got turn 4 up the hill, and then you've got Wiggly Woos, right? And you've got that right-hander, left-hander.
I was too busy putting a like on Pat's comment. You have to start this bit again.
No, I'm not starting again. I was just saying.
Just tell me what track you're talking about, and then I'll catch up.
Interlagos.
Right.
So basically, Albon and Hamilton were coming out of the Wiggly Woos in the midsection to the right-hander that then leads out to the sweeping left-hander in the final segment. And they take 2 very, very different lines. And this is why the first to the Apex rule kills a lot of the racing. So as I was watching back through these racing incidents, I was looking at Max and Lando at Circuit of the Americas, a couple of incidents there. There was drivers taking different approaches to the corner. So you can be the overtaking driver and go out wide and have a better run, or you can gain track position by going narrow. And Hamilton and Albon were taking 2 completely different lines. And then it becomes irrelevant who gets to the apex first, because necessarily the car that's sacrificing a bit of entry speed to get a good run is going to be braking earlier and won't get to the apex. However, that shouldn't mean that they can then get forced off as they pass. So without retreading that specific incident, because I've argued about it many, many, many times, this is just another example of why these prescriptive first to the apex rules really kill a lot of racing.
And the problem with the prescriptive first to the apex rule is, where's the apex?
Yeah.
Who defines the apex?
Well, they must know, mustn't they? They haven't told us.
No, because also, what is the apex? The apex is the ultimate point of the corner you want to hit to get the best exit for a corner. It is a part of the racing line.
Oh.
If an apex isn't a line drawn on a bit of the curb, that's not the apex. The apex is if you're in the wet, where's the apex for a corner? Somewhere completely different, because you can't be on the normal apex because it's wet and you can't use those lines. So you have to use different lines. The apex is fluid. The apex is something you only use when you're trying to set fast laps and driving around on your own. When you're racing, the apex doesn't matter. And this is the thing that's really annoyed me, is because they've brought this first to the apex rule in, everyone who's started watching Formula One and hasn't turned a wheel, which is why we often talk about people get on a computer game, get down to a go-kart track, turn a wheel.
Buy an old Xbox F1 game.
Do something that involves understanding how you drive around a racetrack, because then you'll understand that when you're racing somebody, I don't give a damn where the apex is. When I'm overtaking somebody around the outside, doesn't matter where my apex is, doesn't matter where his apex is. All it matters is I'm going around the outside of somebody. So the apex doesn't matter in overtaking, but F1 has made the apex a physical, tangible thing that makes no sense, because what we get is people like Max, who read the rules, understands the rule, knows exactly what he's allowed to do. That's why he doesn't get punished for things that we don't like, because he's following the rules.
Yeah,
He's
a lot
been
of
an
the time,
absolute master at it. And he will be like, right, okay, I will let off the brakes. I'll get to the apex first. I can do whatever the hell I want.
Well, I'm just saying that's not all inclusive. Sometimes he didn't get punished like the brake checks because, and he should have been.
There's
But
no
yes,
apex at a brake check.
I agree that he definitely seemed to be the first one to adapt to these the apex rules, because that was kind of in line with what he was doing anyway. So, like, in my mind, the rules just morphed around how Verstappen drives. I don't know how that happened, but that is like, oh, these rules exactly suit how Verstappen has been driving for the past 10 years or whatever, however long it is.
Let's leave that one alone before the comments kill us.
I think it's true. I think
I don't disagree with you.
I think they retrospectively justified a few years of strange decisions by going, right, well, let's just codify that in law. But yeah, it's definitely got to the point where it's difficult to understand. They've lost the crowd. I think F1 fans as a whole are looking at these first the Apex rules and saying, burn them all, just let them race. But we can't go back to the let them race. Why not have some laws and some guidelines and just like open up the conversation to like general racing? Because the guys who've grown up in the junior series and have gotten to F1, they have a very different perspective of what should happen in the rules. So the drivers themselves feel like if you are the inside car, you own the corner. Like they feel that.
Yeah, which again isn't the way things work. I mean, I'm going back over old ground. This is where leave a space. If you leave a space, I feel like everything else will fall into place.
Yeah. But when do you leave space? So how much of my car do I have to have alongside you? If I go into a corner, yeah. This is
an interesting one. I don't believe you have to be alongside the wing mirror, which I think is what F1 prescribes.
Front axle to wing mirror on the inside, front axle past the front axle if you're on the outside.
And the reason I don't agree with that is because when you're at that point, you're committed.
Yeah.
You can't back out of that, because what happens when you back out of that? What happens when you back out of that move, Spanners?
Disaster.
You spin the car in front.
Yeah.
Because you go, oh, crap, I'm alongside.
Oh, right, yeah.
I can't get to the corner. I'll just slam on the anchors to get out of it completely. And the personal turning, they hit the front of your car and you get a penalty anyway.
Yeah, I've been that soldier. Yeah, I've done that.
So I think for me, it would be front wheel, rear wheel. If you've got front wheel, rear wheel, then you can't really turn. If you're just sticking a nose in and you're just sticking your front wing in, and you still think you've got a chance to have a move, and they decide to move over, you've committed yourself to some damage there. So I think it's fair to say front axle to rear axle.
And I wonder though if the element of what you do before the braking zone is like an element as well, because like you said, the Miami one with Hamilton, he'd already committed, so it doesn't matter how far Sainz got alongside, Hamilton couldn't do anything about it at that point. So like, should the lateness of the move come into it as well? And how do you prescribe? It's hard, isn't it?
You can't prescribe
how
it.
do you prescribe it? Yeah.
You can't prescribe. Sometimes you just have to admit, you just have to give into the fact that someone's going to crash into somebody and there's going to be a penalty for it. Like, I assume Sainz got a penalty for that.
Oh, yeah, I'd imagine so.
So, in my mind, a dive bomb that doesn't pay off, and the person who is the dive bombee, the dive bomber, who hits their victim, gets a penalty. Because a dive bomb is, and I like the phrase dive bomb, but people also use dive bomb as a negative connotation. But a dive bomb is a legitimate move if it comes off. It's a high risk strategy.
But I mean, there's no reason why the guidelines couldn't differentiate between a move where you've been there for a while and a move where you appear there, and just say here's some kind of things that we expect if you're just appearing there, which is has the driver ahead completely committed to the corner. That's something you can judge as the car behind. Like, when you just let up off the brakes and that car's already steering in. You don't like it, do you? You don't like it.
No, I don't not like it. And I just don't have I don't have the time here to sit here in silence or draw a little diagram and try and figure it out. Because I believe there could be some way to prescribe that. But God, how do you judge that?
there also comes a point where once it gets too complicated, people go, no, I don't like all of that. Tear it all up. Just let them race, and that's what happened in.
And
in
just let them race can't happen because just let them race ends in crashes and damage and costs going up and all this kind of different stuff. And that filters down, because that's the other thing as well. Is ever since these rules have come in, I have noticed a change in karting.
Yes.
And in online sim
racing, yeah, 100%.
I have noticed a difference in the way people drive. And funny enough, in some of these iRaces I've done over the last couple of weeks, I've had incidents with people where they've done that, and I've had awesome races where they think like I do. And definitely not there's people in Red Bull liveries who I've crashed with. And I had an amazing race with somebody in a Lewis Hamilton livery with a Lewis Hamilton helmet, and we had a great race side by side for a majority of the race.
I hate to say that, but in iRacing lobbies, when you see the Red Bull livery, you go, oh god.
Red Bull livery or Senna livery?
Oh, yeah. And then you see a Williams livery, and you go, oh, how lovely.
I'll just scoot up the inside.
Wonderful chat, and I think there's no right answers. This is really subjective. And my personal opinion, I think my final thing is, I think you can have a set of rules, you can have a set of laws, you can have guidelines around that that leaves objectivity, that leaves room for a steward to kind of go, well, yes, there's an abiding principle here, which is that car was out of control, or that car appeared out of nowhere when the car in front had already made their decision. I think you can have guidelines, and you can have, at the end of the day, a referee that makes a call. So there will always be a referee that makes the call, and people will disagree with the referee, but it shouldn't just be based on that steward's philosophy. It shouldn't just be based on week by week. Every steward has a completely different philosophy. They can apply a common set of guidelines, rules, and ethics to it. And yes, decisions will vary, but you can't let them race and every single week it's different.
It's why I believe the steward should be a professional bank of stewards at the same stewards at every single race.
Yeah.
I don't understand why they can't do it. You got to, okay, they want to have a racing driver in there, and older racing drivers are flaky as heck, so they might not want to do an entire season. But okay, have two racing drivers that split the season over it. And you can have a little bit of a panel, but as long as there is consistency and they're bound by the same thing. And bring in my rule where one guy sits in a dark room, watches nothing, and then is just sent two blank cars to.
And that's so possible now. There's no way, you can't tell me there's no AI program that can blank out the cars. It is easy.
Easy. If we want to go into the other rules, it's a case of, oh, well, this one's going to get judged at the end of the season, at the end of the session.
Yeah, I hate that.
And this one's going to get... No, either do them all in the session or do them all after the session, but definitely do not do them after the session, because the worst thing you can do for F1, especially in a sport in a world now where we have very short attention spans, you can't change the result hours after a race. Listen, if someone's breached the rules and there's a disqualification, that's different. But for racing incidents that happen in the race or on the way to the grid, you can't do those after the race.
I'm sorry, we've seen loads of will be investigated after the race where you go, there's so much leeway then for deciding, well, if we can do a really harsh penalty now because it actually doesn't affect that driver. And then we look like we did a harsh penalty, even though it didn't, we look decisive, even though we didn't have to affect the result of the race. Whereas they're less willing to make the call that actually affects the race.
But it's also why I don't like 5-second penalties. So with regards to, we already spoken about this one, was Lando and Max at Kota. Lando got ahead off the track. And he was like, right, let's just do as much as we can to try and get 5 seconds ahead, because they're only going to give me, if they're going to give me a penalty, it's going to be 5 seconds. So let's see if he didn't do it ultimately, but he tried to run away and get a 5-second gap. But I hate that. It's why I miss drive-through penalties. Yes, they are harsh.
So harsh.
Yes, they ruin your race. Don't crash into people then.
Don't crash into people. That's the final word from Alex Van Gien. Go and follow him on YouTube by typing in what?
At Alex Van Gien Racing.
And there'll be a link in the show notes below. I know, I'm the same. I don't want to type anything. I just want to click the link in the show notes. Consider supporting us at patreon.com/ Missed Apex, and follow us on TikTok at Missed Apex F1, Spanners Ready, and Missed Apex on Instagram. So they're separate. So my one is just like me going, hi, I'm on a beach. And then the Missed Apex one is reels from the show, YouTube shorts as well. Subscribe. Whatever you're doing, subscribe wherever you listen. If it's on Pocket Cast or Apple, make sure you subscribe. That really, really helps us. Please tell a friend and subscribe on YouTube anyway. Wherever we see you next, work hard, be kind, and have fun. This was Missed Apex Podcast. Yield or crash. That's what we do to other podcasts. Yeah. Diving up the inside. Forcing you off track. Full aggression. Please no one watch me actually race on sim racing, where you'll see that I'm the exact opposite of that. Excuse me, don't mind me coming through. Sorry.